Good evening and welcome. I'm Todd Duplantis, and you are on the road beyond. Good to have you with us tonight. Good to be back on the air on this Monday. We have got a great show lined up for you. We're going to be talking about Mars, all things Mars, delving into mysteries and things happening on the fourth planet in our solar system. Before we get started, though, I want to mention that earlier today, Elon Musk's Starship, you remember that, they were set to launch this morning, but the mission was scrubbed due to some technical issues. They do hope, though, to try the launch again in the next 48 hours. We'll certainly cover that on the next show. Want to talk about, before we get started with Mars, I got a bone to pick here. Okay. And I want to get to this, and I want to talk with our guest about this because I had a chance to speak with, let's just say, a source at NASA. And my question, one thing I've always felt strongly upon is when you're watching these cameras in space, whether it be on Mars from the rover or just the International Space Station, when something strange starts to happen, the camera feed goes away. If you don't believe me, Google it, and there'll be dozens of examples available on YouTube to show how a mysterious object shows up in the background and the camera feed's cut. So I spoke with a source at NASA, and I asked this person, I said, does this really happen, and why does it happen? Of course, what do you think the answer was? The answer was absolutely not. The feed is not cut off. So my impression's been, we could see a Coke can on Mars, yet NASA would tell us that's a rock formation. It's not a Coke can. You know, obviously I'm being a bit facetious here, but that's just what I truly believe. My guest tonight we're going to talk with, Daryl Sims, is known as the alien hunter. He's here to talk about Mars. Daryl, welcome back to the show. Always good to see you. I want to ask your opinion. In your opinion, do they cut the camera feed, or is that just a technical glitch? What the hell's going on here?
Well, since I wasn't personally there, I can't answer that for any degree of certainty, but I can tell you this from friends of mine that are NASA related, some of them former employees and others, and the answer is categorically yes.
Okay.
Photos get altered, they get changed, film gets cut, absolutely.
So we are being protected. I mean, are they trying to protect us from something? I mean, come on now. We're getting more videos. We don't have full disclosure, but at least we have government people saying they're working on getting us answers with UAPs or whatever the hell they're calling them these days. But that seems to be happening as well. Do you think we're going to get disclosure anytime soon, or we're going to continue being protected ourselves?
Todd, I used to be in Central Intelligence Agency in covert operations. I trained at the spy camp there for intelligence agents. And the answer to the question is there isn't going to be a disclosure that's truthful. You're going to get a disclosure, all right, just like you got at Roswell 70-some years ago. And if you want more of that, we'll be able to give it to you. But you paid us to lie to you as a people. What do you think we do?
Yeah. Well, let's jump into tonight's subject because we got a lot to delve into. Let's talk about Mars. Do they have an atmosphere in Mars? What's your opinion of what's going on in Mars? Because believe it or not, folks, we're not the only ones with rovers up there right now.
That's fact. It's fourth planet in our solar system, and it's once thought to be a totally different place, but all kinds of things have been happening since then. And does it have an atmosphere, or does it have life now?
We just don't know. But look at the size of Mars compared to Earth. Now, it's about half the size, but long ago, was it like Earth? Did it have surface water? Did it have an atmosphere? Now, this image shows an accurate representation of the size comparison between Earth and Mars. Mars is only about half the diameter of Earth. The Earth is 7,926 miles long, while Mars is about 4,200 miles. The size is quite different. This is what NASA suspects Mars may have looked like 5 billion years ago. You look at the picture, awfully interesting, right? With a thick blanket of CO2 and liquid water, perhaps conductive to life. What do you think, Daryl?
Well, this raises a big question. Could Mars have been the first host of life in our solar system? Who knows? There may be many who postulate simply that the seeds of life in the solar system started at Mars. That's entirely possible. There are documented findings of asteroids thought to be from Mars hurled here after eruptions and meteor strikes that could literally show that life was on Mars at one time. Could Mars have ejected magic dust of life and started life here? Who knows?
We're going to dig more into that whole theory because, if we were told we came from Mars, just think that what that would do to religion and Christianity and the way that we've been taught and thought all of our lives. People's minds could literally explode. Now, there have been theories about the circadian rhythm of life may be more in tune to the 25-hour cycle that is a day on Mars as opposed to the 24-hour cycle here that the DNA of all life on Earth is really in line with, and the day cycle of Mars.
Well, let's not jump to conclusions. I know there's a Harvard study that but the day cycle on Mars is only 37 minutes longer than Earth. It's an interesting hypothesis, to be sure, that the DNA of life, all life on Earth, might be linked to Mars. That said, there are some vast differences between Earth and Mars.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the core of both planets, we know that Earth has a core that our continents are floating on a hot fluid cushion of lava and are in constant state of slow movement. But Mars is quite a different story with more of a solid crust and no evidence of floating continents like Earth. Mars core consists of iron and nickel, around 15% sulfur, as a very dense core compared to the core of the Earth. Now, the crust of the planet was formed the same way as the crust on Earth was, but volcanoes and tectonic plates which are now dormant. There is evidence of ancient volcanic activity, but Mars has an extremely volcanic activity evidenced by this. Take a look at this picture. This incredibly big volcano is Olympus Mons and is located on the surface of Mars. It is the highest peak on Mars, reaching a height of 14 miles. Think of that, 14 miles. You can see clear signs that there was a lot of lava pouring out of the volcano. The biggest volcano on Earth is Mauna Loa, which is located in Hawaii and is just 5.6 miles tall, which is very small compared to the height of Olympus Mons, 14 miles high. It has a size of, the size of this volcano explains why Mars crust is so thick. Now, Olympus Mons is labeled the tallest mountain in the solar system to be discovered. That's incredible when you think of something that's 14 miles high, Daryl.
Todd, Mars has moons, 2 of them. The smaller and farther out of orbit is called Deimos, named after the ancient Greek god of dread and terror. But its closest and largest moon is Phobos. Now, Phobos has an amazing history. It's named after the Greek god of fear and panic. It is very close orbit. In fact, all of the known moons in our solar system, it is the closest orbiting at just under 4,000 miles from the surface of Mars. You can see it has a very peculiar shape. Both those moons are believed to be captured asteroids that are now locked in orbit. Many astronomers believe that Phobos is just a captured asteroid because of its massive impact crater on one of its sides. One side always faces Mars, just like Earth's moon, and has many linear grooves on its surface, pointing to another reason why it could have been an asteroid.
Well, it's interesting. Let's circle back for a second because we're using a lot of names in the names of this volcano, the moons, that date back to Greek mythology. And if you think of Greek mythology, the gods always came from somewhere. They were coming from somewhere. And if we even go back to the last show you were on with us, we talked about fallen angels. So we've already got speculation or mythology. And if you look back to the ancient Sumerians and with their writings, or at least how it was interpreted by Zechariah Sitchin, there were fallen angels, or the Anunnaki came here from somewhere else. Could it be a coincidence that we're going back and naming areas of Mars named after this, going back to mythology of mankind? Or could it be evidence that maybe ancient man knew things that we don't know today or refuse to believe?
Well, in my personal opinion, based on the research I've done concerning ancient religions and ancient histories, starting with the ancient Sumerians and the ancient Hebrews, the the Warkins, and in India is a good example as well. There are massive pieces of information that our current histories simply do not record. Right. It's out there. It's clear.
It's out there. It's clear. But traditional archaeologists and scientists, do you think, in your opinion, do they just not want to believe it because they spent their whole life based on some beliefs that now they're thinking this may be true, so we're going to refuse to believe that? Or are they more open to believing that now?
Well, Todd, you've hit on a really important issue. The fact is that the ancient Vedic literature talks about a nuclear war fought by these fallen angels, creatures, the different ones were fighting each other. And the fact is, the science shows that there literally is radiation strata there in India to this day. It didn't get there by magic. It got there somehow, probably a nuclear war.
Let's get back to the red planet. It's very crowded in the orbit around the red planet. Why is that? Because everybody's sending up a satellite. By last count, since 1971, there have been 18 orbiting satellites around Mars looking for at the surface and atmosphere and searching for signs of water. Now, back in May of 1971, there were 3 launches. The Soviets launches Mars 2 and 3, and the U.S. launched Mariner 9 at the same time. And it was the first to reach Mars orbit, beating the Soviets in the Mars space race. In all, there have been 18 Mars orbiters, and there are still 8 functioning right now. Right, Daryl?
That's fact, and there have been failures. This is the Mars polar lander that we're looking at here, sent to discover water on Mars. It crashed. $165 million flushed down the drain. During its landing in 1999, one of the engines shut off prematurely, causing the spacecraft to slam into Mars' surface at a very high speed. Nothing survived the wreckage, and it was too big a blow to NASA's Mars programs.
But if you think of that in today's dollars, 165 million, that would be a bargain to send something all the way to Mars. In today's dollars, we're talking, in the billions at least that it would be for that. But,
yes,
you got to think about the cost compared to what you get out of it, because we've got a lot of things that we use in everyday life that were developed from the space program or from some of these missions.
That's true. The amazing thing to me about this whole business is the infamous face on Mars.
Oh, yeah.
This was a picture captured by Viking 1 orbiting Mars. And I have a quick funny story about that. My brother, who was just about 10 years old when this picture first came out at NASA, at their location, he opened the glass door and took the photo. I have the actual original photo at NASA because my brother stole it right out of their cabinet.
That's incredible.
I couldn't believe it.
You might get a knock on your door now from some folks at NASA.
Well, I've had some interesting things happen, but the curious thing about me is this the face on Mars. We have got equipment that literally will you can photograph a rock from 2,400 miles up and see every detail in the smallest part of that rock. And to say that we can't tell you what the face of Mars is, I just don't buy it.
We're going to talk more about that face in a few moments because I got a few things to talk about with that as well. But let's talk about what some of these other things these satellites have found and what they're looking for. Maybe proof of water. Now, I believe the rover has found some signs of that, certainly where water could have been. But if you look at some of these pictures, they're incredible. We've got a crater. Look at this. This is near the Jezero crater where Mars rover Perseverance is rolling around with its helicopter. Little helicopter it launches from the rover. And it certainly looks like an ancient dry riverbed, right?
In my opinion, there's been water there.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, and this is also the helicopter on Mars called Ingenuity. So yeah, we've got our helicopter flying around the rover, catching things as well, Daryl.
I think water's been there for quite a while. It's been seen for hundreds of years, just in different ways.
And when you have water, there's a good chance there could be life. Now, obviously, maybe not now, but there's been some interesting things that these satellites and the rovers have found. Case in point, as we were just talking about, the face on Mars.
Let me chime in here, Scotty.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about this at the head of the show, and I think it's important to question. Are we seeing everything that the rovers and Ingenuity, the helicopter, are actually capturing? Or is there a censorship that we're unaware of?
One of the people that worked with me is a DSP satellite specialist. Now, these are people that can tell you that our 18, it was more now, but 18 geosynchronous satellites are all pointed toward Earth, can literally read your watch if you hold your hand still, and at 2,400 miles up. And for someone to tell me that we can't tell what the face of Mars is or anything else on Mars, I don't buy it for an instant. It's just, we have the tech. It's being blocked.
Well,
let's get down to that issue, because if they are hiding what's really there, what is really there?
I would be only guessing myself, but based on, again, the information that I have from NASA, engineers and other people who still work there, but some that don't, it's clear to me that there's a lot of stuff we have not seen. And I think some of the other illustrations we may look at tonight may illustrate and underscore that entire point.
Well, here's another question I would have. We're sending a damn rover to Mars. Why wouldn't you send it to where the face was or is or whatever's there? And from what I've seen around the area, there's been books written about alleged pyramids, structures in the area. It seems to me, if we're spending billions of dollars to send a rover to Mars, why wouldn't you send it somewhere where you know there's intrigue or a possibility of finding something?
Well, one of the scientists that I've read about and I've been told about that worked at NASA, that he's now deceased, he wrote a book on the nuclear war that happened on Mars. He said the so-called strange things you're looking at there, that's the remnants of what was a civilization.
Yeah. And it could be the remnants or the origin of mankind here on Earth as well. And that would, once again, blow everybody's mind, including the Vatican. Let's look at some other interesting things. We've got some other things the rovers have captured. The rover Curiosity has found some very unique things on the surface of the red planet. Look at this one here. There's one, and then I think we got something that kind of looks like a dragon. Have you seen some of these, Daryl?
I have. I've seen a number of them, and I've got some friends that's all they do is look at Mars and anything related to Mars and the moon. And they go through these consistently. They see things I don't, but they have equipment that I simply don't have to uncover it. But the evidence to me, what we're looking at here with our equipment, not using NASA's, because NASA, I assure you, can see things far better than we can.
And there's other things that appear to be statues on Mars. There's things rising up from the ground. Is this thing here? What the hell is this? And then the image of what looks like a ghost of a woman, or maybe the statue of a woman. But then again, it seems like scientists are so quick to say these are just natural formations. You know, forget it. Nothing to see here, folks. Just natural formations.
I'm sorry, Todd. There is nothing natural about those images.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing natural.
Once again, my Coke can theory. If they showed us one, it would be explained as a rock formation. And also take a look at some other things that Mars, the rover, captured. We talked about this next image in one of our previous shows about a year and a half ago. But this, Daryl, looks like a door into a mountain. I mean, what else could it be?
Looks like a door in a mountain to me.
Yeah.
And again, we go back to your theory, Daryl, about a war, a conflagration, something that would force the inhabitants below the surface. Is there a living entity a living organization, a living race under the surface of Mars.
Well, that is yet to be discovered at this point. It doesn't mean that NASA or other people may not know that, but they're simply not going to tell it to us for sure.
They know more than they're telling.
Of course they do.
Of course they do. Yeah. But according to the source I spoke with, they don't turn off the camera feed. Doesn't happen. Anyway, now we turn to the issue of power. Now, those fascinating images were captured by Mars rover Curiosity, launched back in 2011. And after 10 years of service, at last check, it's still rolling around up there. Previous rovers were sent up to Mars were powered by solar cells, but the Curiosity was different as it was powered by a thermoelectric power generator that now uses plutonium as a source of power. Now, there's breaking news from the Chinese, our friends over in China. Mm-hmm. Aboard the Chinese space station, the PRC has announced the first successful test of a so-called piston-free spiraling thermoelectric power converter. Now, while we don't have pictures of the actual converter aboard the Chinese space station that underwent the successful test, the technology is also being tested and used by NASA.
Well, you know, one thing about the Chinese, Todd, and this is important, Chinese have a rover up there, but it's not functioning now because the winds have blown sand over the solar voltaic cells. And so they're dead. Their rover is dead right now. And this announcement of a new power technology that apparently we also have is very important to furtherance of the exploration of Mars, because solar voltaic panels don't mix well with red Mars dust.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Well, they've got these spiraling thermoelectric power converters, and they've been tested by NASA and have shown a continuous use for 14 years now and counting. That's right, still up there. Now, these innovation, really, I mean, when you think about it, we're down here paying, what, $4 a gallon for gas. Yeah, we put a mark. Okay, bear with me for a second here. We're all paying $4 a gallon for gas down here. And gas is, oh, by the way, folks, get ready to pay more throughout the summer because it's expected to continue going up. But on Mars, we've got a rover that's been up there for a decade, working off a self-contained unit that creates power. Am I missing something, or why are we not all driving these damn cars down here with the same thing?
Well, you make a great argument,
I mean, we've got incredible technology. We got Velcro from the space program. Let's get some alternate fuel capabilities. You want to talk about solar power? Get me one of those damn thermal things to put in my car so that I can run it for 11 years. That's what I really want, folks. I just don't think that's going to happen. Daryl, we are in a new space race. Who are we competing with right now? Are the Chinese really competition for us, or do we need to worry about Russia or maybe, Uruguay? Who do we need to worry about now in the space race?
I think any level-headed person would tell you that it's China. And the fact is, we have literally financed their entire space program through our massive debt. And I'm not being political. I'm just saying that we literally have financed it, and they've done an outstanding job. And we're way behind them.
And it's not just the debt, Daryl. I think you will agree. It also has to do with their theft of our technology.
Thank you. That's very, very, very clear. Well,
correct. It doesn't help when you've got people releasing information on the internet on a daily basis with, top secret information. That certainly doesn't help either.
That's correct. And I'm just, I was horrified by the release of that. But I tell you, the Chinese they're way ahead of us. And I tell you, the thing eventually you'll get into this later, into AI. And when you do, you're going to scare half your audience, because I'm telling you, it's coming, and they're not going to slow down for it in the least.
Yeah, we could all be headed to Terminator land. If you haven't seen that, go rewatch the movie again, because that could be our lives in the next 50 years. Daryl, question for you as well. I know we're talking about Mars, but we haven't been to the moon in over 50 years. Why?
I was invited to an invitation-only meeting to the JPL. JPL is a Jet Propulsion Lab out in Pasadena, California. I and one of my doctors was invited, and these are just NASA engineers, and they were working and fixing to launch the program called the Cassini project. Cassini is a nuclear-powered rocket heading toward the Saturn in that area. And I asked them the same question. Why did you take a left turn? You left the moon, went to Mars, took a left turn there all of a sudden, went back to the system at Saturn. What is it that you saw there that made you leave Mars all of a sudden and send the first nuclear package spacecraft? What did you find there that interested you? You could have heard a pin drop in that entire massive building as the man said, "Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Free drinks and food for everyone and free gifts in the back," as he sneered at me.
You kind of angered the folks at JPL, didn't you, with that question?
They know who I am. They know what I do, and they invited me in spite of that. Somebody wanted me there. I don't know who.
Well, the Ringmakers of Mars, that will be our next podcast.
Yeah.
Well, it's a big one.
The big one, a big one.
It's the big one.
I've also, there are documented things that former astronauts have said about things that were on the moon that they found during their missions. They were being watched.
Yes.
I think it was I don't want to say it. I think it was Neil Armstrong that said something, "We're being watched right now," when he was communicating back to Earth. So were we told not to come back, or we were told to, wait, you're not allowed here for a while? I mean, do you think that was the case?
Well, I actually don't know, but I can tell you this.
Right.
A friend of mine bought NASA footage from one of NASA engineers that's now deceased. In fact, he wrote the book, Ringmakers of Saturn. And anyway, he was confronted by some people in the Las Vegas area. It scared him half to death. He gave them all the film that he had bought, illegally, of course, from this NASA engineer. And he was telling us all about this back in LA, and I tossed photographs of the same thing he had just paid $15,000 for. And I laughed, and he said, "Where did you get those?" And I said, "Well, I bet you I didn't pay $15,000 for them." But they showed UFOs on the moon, literally watching our lander right there.
With that, we're going to have to wrap up tonight's episode. This went by quickly. Daryl Sims, the Alien Hunter, we appreciate you being here. Hey, folks, we're the Road Beyond Podcast. Catch us live on Monday nights. Follow us as the Road Beyond Podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.